Hey up and welcome to the Strategy Sessions. My name is Andy Jarvis. I'm the host of the Strategy Sessions podcast and I run a company called Eximo Marketing. I work with companies, medium and large companies, to help sort their marketing out, fix problems and take their growth to the next level. This podcast is my way of helping to share some of the great knowledge from great marketers around the world to the audience. So thank you for listening. This is episode 1 of season number 2. Season number 1 had 25 episodes with great interviews with some of the best thinkers in the industry, really. Just recently, Zaid Al-Qassab from Channel 4 was named in the top 100 most effective marketers in the UK. Michael Mitchell from MailChimp just been part of the team there. That's seen MailChimp be bought by Intuit. Serge Beswick from Scene Connect is now speaking at the Marketing Festival, the Festival of Marketing even. And look, it's just been brilliant for me personally to learn from some of these people and hopefully share some of that insight with you. So why not do it all again? Which is why we're back for season 2. Today's episode, coming up in a moment, is with Amy Smith. Amy is the Regional Marketing Director for Les Mills. Les Mills is a huge fitness company. If you don't know who they are, Amy explains it, walks us through the history of the company. Really, really fascinating stuff. So what else is new for season 2? Well, nothing much really. You know, if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? So there's the same formula. Some great interviews with interesting people who've got lots to add to the field of marketing. I've also got top tips, or as regular listeners will know them as TOPTIP. TOPTIP. So we've got top tips, sometimes from the guests, sometimes from third parties, and they're little kind of sound bites, little things you can take away and go, right, we could maybe look at fixing this afternoon and then see if it helps us improve what we're doing. So really actionable insights into things that you could be doing and changing. So yeah, we've still got them. And that's it, really. Little bits from me, little bits from a few other people, but really every fortnight, about an hour-long episode with a great interview with a guest, a little bit of a top tip, and then, yeah, you share it with your friends if you're interested. Subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're on Apple or somewhere like that where you can leave a review, please do. 5 stars is ideal, but, leave a review. It helps me understand. And my contact details are in the show notes, so please do drop me a line if you've got any thoughts, comments, suggestions, anything like that about the show. I would love to hear from you. Before we get into Amy's interview, just one more thing to let you know. The digital marketing strategy program that I run with the University of Vaasa is still available online. It's on Teachable, link in the show notes. It's a fully remote course delivered entirely in English. University of Vaasa is in Finland, where firstly their English is better than ours, and secondly I don't speak any Finnish, so it's definitely in English. And it walks you through a process where you can build a marketing strategy for your organization. It's designed for people in maybe slightly smaller companies, maybe entrepreneurs and people like that. But it's really robust, built out of years of research and practice that I've done with a lot of clients. And you know what? I think it's a bargain. It's only €249. So have a look at that and please do dive in and buy it. Enough of the commercial break now. Let's go to the interview with Amy Smith from Les Mills. I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a month ago now, during the Olympics to talk about Les Mills, some of the changes they've had to make, the impact of COVID, managing a global brand in different territories, all some really, really interesting stuff. Best of all, Amy's just brilliant to listen to. So here, get your ears around this. Amy, welcome to the Strategy Sessions.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much for this. So I'm really excited to have you on. Let's start by explaining, for those people who don't know, what is Les Mills where you work?
Yeah, so Les Mills, we are a group fitness company. We're the world leaders in group fitness. People may recognise our programs more than Les Mills as a whole. So Body Pump, Body Combat, Body Balance. But yeah, we started in New Zealand. Our founders are in New Zealand in the 60s. So Les Mills himself, he is a 4-time Olympian for New Zealand, and he set up a chain of gyms in the 60s. And Les Mills grew within New Zealand over the coming decades. But alongside that, Philip, Les's son, was coming back from the US. He was on an athletic scholarship at UCLA. He'd worked in the music industry, so he'd managed a rock band. And he came back after the sort of explosion of aerobics in the US, and came back and sort of combined the two worlds of fitness and alongside performance. So he brought dancers and actors alongside elite athletes and came back and created this sort of revolution of group fitness in New Zealand. And then over the years, that's been distributed globally. And we're now in 21,000 gyms across the world and 140,000 instructors teaching the program. So the Les Mills programs are created every 3 months. And that then gets distributed through to our instructors, who are just the kind of shining stars of the brand. And then that gets taught in classes and gyms around the world.
So one of the reasons, not that you could probably tell from this video and being injured and in lockdown for a number of months, is that I'm a bit of a Les Mills fan of some of the workouts and some of the classes. And really the work that goes into developing those classes is obviously a key part of what you do, because there's something different comes along quite a lot. And most of it's hateful when you're in the class, but actually quite enjoyable when you look back at it afterwards. So the product, the end product, is really core to what you do, and I think that's key. That's the same everywhere. But you're effectively constantly developing new products on a 3-month cycle for, what was it, 6 million workouts per week that people do?
Yeah, so we've got just over 20 programs now, and that sort of constant innovation is just part of the DNA of the brand. So there's the Group Fit team based over in New Zealand, which are just the absolute experts and the secret sauce behind the brand. So Jackie, Philip's wife, heads up that team, and that's the team that create the programs, and they are constantly looking at and sort of listening to new music, thousands of tracks every cycle. They're looking at the trends, the innovations, what's happening in the industry, and then creating and evolving the programs. Obviously, each program has its own kind of core and foundation, and you know what it needs to stay true to, but they are constantly evolving alongside developing new products that go into a bit of an incubator and a bit of a lab over in New Zealand. So the gym over in New Zealand has all of the kind of innovation coming through and different trials happening. But the Group Fit team then work alongside our research team, which all of the programs are rigorously tested and scientifically backed. And again, that's a really important part of the brand. So bring to life that expertise and sort of constant innovation is something we just hold really true to the brand.
Brilliant. Now, there's a link in the show notes to the full history of Les Mills as a company, and there's some great videos in there as well. I would definitely say go and watch it, if only to see how much of a massive unit Leslie Mills was when he competed in the Olympics. The man was enormous, right? You just look at it and go, is that real? He was huge, and he's still involved in the business today. It's still family run and family owned, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolute legend. So yeah, Les' son Philip is our executive director, and the whole family are still still family owned and run, which is really inspiring to work with a family that has grown this brand over the last 50 years and are still so, you know, they are steering the ship and you know, creating the magic that comes out. So it's amazing to work for them and a company that has that history.
Brilliant. And what a history it is. So please do go and read the history of the brand. They're quite open and honest about things that have gone really wrong, about things that went right, about some of the disasters that nearly hit the company. We could probably do a 2-hour podcast just on the history, but I don't want to get into that rabbit hole. I want to look at some of the marketing challenges, Amy, that you've faced. And we're sat during the Olympics recording this podcast. But it's the other major event of the last few years that I'm going to jump into now, and I'm sorry to you and I'm sorry to everyone, but it's time for the COVID klaxon. But COVID, you know, there's some industries got whacked harder with COVID than other industries, right? And Les Mills was sort of, the instructors were really key. Your model was heavily leaning on gyms and instructors delivering classes, group classes in person. All of that stopped quite abruptly everywhere around the world really quickly. What happened at Les Mills? What was that moment when you sat one morning and went, oh shit? Tell us about the last few years, Amy.
Yeah, as you said, that the fitness industry was massively, as you said, that the fitness industry was massively impacted, and gyms closed across the world. The instructors, lost their livelihood; they couldn't teach. So, like on the one side, there was all of this kind of absolute disaster happening at the same time as health and fitness never being so important, and almost like a massive boom in people entering the category for the first time and actually have starting their fitness journey for the first time. So you kind of had these two dynamics, but that moment where gyms closed and it just sort of overnight almost kind of the world changed, as we all know. It's really interesting looking back, and I think many companies probably can resonate with this, but just the way that I was just so in awe of kind of the way that the whole team kind of came together and knew that we had to do things differently, turn things on its head, and be able to kind of focus on the things that were going to make the biggest difference. So I guess, our club partners, so the gyms, our instructors, as I said, they were our absolute priority kind of going into lockdown. Like, how do we sort of, I'm going to use the P word, pivot our model to then, how we support them to kind of get through this pandemic. So a big thing was around providing solutions for instructors to be able to teach, for clubs to be able to connect with members while we're in lockdown. Obviously, with gyms closed, like that looked at live streaming, that looked at home solutions. So our Les Mills On Demand product, which I'll come to in a second, we had an affiliate partnership available for clubs pre-COVID, but when COVID hit, we extended that to all of our club partners. We had a 60-day free trial that club partners could offer their members free at-home solution to be able to kind of stay connected to the club. And Les Mills On Demand went from kind of being in 10 countries pre-COVID to over 100. So kind of that sort of flip to, okay, how do we facilitate that at-home solution, stay connected to the gym? So the other element was around our instructors. Like I said, there's 140,000 over the globe, and they are the most passionate, inspiring people you'll ever meet, and heartbreaking to see them kind of going through the last 18 months with gym closures. So again, looking at how we could support with live streaming options. We flipped all of our education, which has always been in person. We flipped all of that online in a matter of weeks, which probably would have taken a couple of years. And just to, again, stay connected and provide some support or inspirational connection during that time.
And I could probably assume there was conversations going on internally over the last few years about maybe could we move some of our education online, with probably a good bit of pushback, with good reason, from lots of people going, yeah, but we teach instructors in person, they need to get the feel of it, they need to know how. There must have been a lot of that sort of discussion going on over a number of years, but then all of a sudden it was like, no, we have to do this. Was that sort of how it went from maybe to we do it or we don't exist?
Yeah, so we had some of our education products were partly online, or could be chosen to do it online, but nothing like the scale of everything that over the last 18 months. And so yeah, it was that we don't have another option. Even the assessment of how for instructors, once they've gone through their training, they then submit a class of them teaching, and that then goes for assessment. Obviously there weren't any classes, the gyms weren't open, so again, how you assess kind of over Zoom, and and it's just again complete shift overnight. But as again lots of probably brands have faced, is that it has just accelerated things that maybe were in the working, but it's gone from kind of 2 years to 2 days or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I suppose so that was the kind of, well, going into lockdown, like, right, how do we sort of keep instructors and clubs supported and connected to their members? But obviously, the at-home product grew massively, and that was both through clubs being able to provide it to members, but then just that direct-to-consumer model just kind of exploded. So in the first 6 months, it was about 800% increase year on year. The at-home equipment, we've got an equipment side of the business, which again, people were just really keen to invest in their at-home setup. So both of those just kind of shot through the roof last year. And again, having to rally around a platform that previously was supporting kind of 10 countries to then 100, you know, how you invest in that and evolve that as quickly as possible to get that support system there was just amazing to watch, really, as a company.
So the Les Mills On Demand, do you call it LMOD internally, or
LMOD? You know,
LMOD.
Everyone loves an acronym. So, but yeah, Les Mills On Demand.
Les Mills On Demand. Let's go with that.
I'm going to take LMOD back, though.
There you go. that was already there. It was already there and working. And you know, even just from a technical point of view, you know, when you have something built for X amount of users in X number of countries, when that number goes through the roof, just the technical challenge alone is ridiculous. Never mind the customer support challenge and, you know, the huge, like 800% increase in how do you cope? How do you scale for that in terms of the number of people you need during a pandemic? How does that work? How do you?
I mean, the team that turn this around are incredible. Primarily, they're based over in New Zealand, and again, I suppose it's what you kind of mentioned earlier. It's this, you know, we just had to do it, and so you just have to rally around it and get the investment and the people and the setup to make it happen. You know, there was such an opportunity to provide that connection, that you know, fitness solution for people at home while everybody was in kind of a miserable place in lockdown. So, you know, we really just, you know, had to get the kind of infrastructure there to make it happen.
So let's talk about this from a sort of a purist marketing perspective then, and a brand management appeal. So Les Mills as a brand has been there for a long time, but in many ways, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, not being used hugely in a public facing way. You know, the public come to grit classes or body pump, and yes, the Les Mills brand is there, but it's more the class they buy into. And often, in many cases, the instructor, who isn't an employee, is the public face of your brand. So then during lockdown and you've gone direct to consumer, Les Mills On Demand becomes the parent brand that you're asking people to buy into to access your content. How does that work from a brand perspective? And have you had to, you know, do any fleet-footed dancing to make that happen? Or, you know, what were the discussions like in-house about that?
Yeah, there's been many discussions, but kind of, again, over the year, it's not just it's not just since COVID, you know, with Les Mills On Demand, you know, having been around for 5 years, you know, the discussions that have happened. But I think with that shift in business model, you know, previously we were a 90% B2B model with a kind of very ingredient brand kind of focus for the last 30 years. But now, you know, with Les Mills On Demand and that direct to consumer model, you know, we really need to accelerate our consumer brand strategy in that side of the business to ensure that the kind of the whole brand grows. But I think it's not one or the other. You know, we know that our individual program brands are so important, both to our club partners, both to the people who attend the classes, to instructors, but each of them, you know, they've all got their own brand identity and got their own history, but it's not one or the other. So we need to have that strong master brand in order to grow and kind of succeed in this new fitness world and dynamic. But then, you know, we will continue to focus and balance and grow the individual program brands that's right for them.
Because it is certainly, I know when I've worked on projects about going direct to consumer, D2C, one of the big internal discussions and the big challenges is the pushback from the existing distribution network. So, you know, products, it could be sold online via retailers, or you could have in some place like franchise partners or whatever. It's different depending on each business, but with you, it's your club model. Once you start going direct to consumers, the distribution partner often gets a little bit twitchy about that. It's like, well, we've been doing this with you for years. How come you're now cutting us out and going around this way? But your business model isn't about that, is it? With the new push, it's about actually still committing to gyms and instructors and still building that while also opening up a new market there.
Yeah, totally. And I think there is that, you know, we've definitely had that conversation, especially with instructors who, again, like I said, just such a critical part of the brand, and so loyal, and they're kind of often the main focus of our conversations of, okay, instructors first, how to kind of support, but that at home dynamic, it is, we have lots of discussions with instructors of, is it taking away from the live experience? Is it is it going to damage the kind of in-club element? But interestingly, even before COVID, 85% of people had an at-home fitness regime solution, workout option, as well as a gym membership. So it has always been that dynamic. And we know that kind of since COVID, that flexibility and, work out where you want, when you want, is just going to continue. So being able to have the at-home plus the in-club, will continue to be important. And also we know that the Les Mills On Demand is bringing new people into the category. So what we've seen over the last year, a lot of the people coming into the platform are new to Les Mills and new to group exercise. And then people, once they've tried it, they've felt confident, then they're excited to try a class. So I think it's about just over 60% of people who don't have a gym membership, once they've tried Les Mills On Demand class, they want to then go and try a live class. So it's bringing people into the club. And I think, people who might not have experienced group fitness before, you're in the gym and you look through peek through the door and think, oh, what are they doing in there? I'm not sure I'm ready to kind of step into that space. So it's really helping bridge that gap for people who may not have taken that step previously.
And I think so. Innovation is core in terms of the class workouts you mentioned, business model innovation. It's key. And I think if we just talk about the sector broadly and some of the challenges that Les Mills faces within that, not challenges, but opportunities, let's put it that way. But you've got people like Peloton and others and sort of cashed up competitors coming in at one end. You've got this move to the Joe Wickses, and maybe certainly in the UK coming at different places. You've got different classes coming out. There was also a lovely bit on the website about how market research was telling them that a younger audience wasn't really bought into the body pump classes and things like that, which then led to Grit being developed as a shorter, more intense class. So I think what I took from looking at all these different things was that standing still and just staying where you are is not an option. That's the quickest way to kill the business, isn't it? You've got to keep pushing forward. So how does all of that kind of affect the day-to-day activity of what you do and what everybody does within Les Mills, or that constant push for innovation?
Yeah, I think the competition that you mentioned is such an important, has always been important, but if you look at the last 18 months, you've not, like you mentioned, Joe Wicks, Peloton, you've also got the big tech, Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, they're coming into the fitness category, for the first time in a big way. And so there's kind of, competing dynamics from all angles, but that's really exciting. And we kind of welcome the competition and sort of bring it on, because, innovating and kind of pushing to the next level is, again, just being part of the brand. What Jackie and Philip have done over the last 50 years is, again, constantly innovate. And now their children, Diana and Les, are taking that kind of next stage of the brand and journey. And Les heads up the innovation and the new programs, one being Grit, which you mentioned, which is our HIT program. And then the Trip, which I don't know whether you've ever done it, but it's an immersive cycling world, which is just incredible. Again, every 3 months there's a new world to explore, and it just kind of takes you and exports you to another world, another place while you're working out. So, and the team over in New Zealand, they are constantly trialing new formats. There's a couple of studios in the office to try new formats. There's the gym down the road that kind of starts incubating these new programs. And yeah, as you said, like, if you don't innovate, or if you're standing still, then you're not going to survive.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And so I think one of the things that gives you that strong platform for innovation and strong platform for growth is the brand history and the brand heritage. But I think it's more than that. It's what the brand stands for, isn't it? It's there's lots of brands have got a great history, but don't work out how to make it relevant and use it now. And for Les Mills, what that can mean in terms of diversity, equality, and inclusion is really strong, and it comes all the way through the company DNA. Tell us about how that works for the organisation and how that looks to the public, really.
In terms from our brand purpose.
Yeah.
So our brand purpose is for a fitter planet, which I remember when I was applying for the role at Les Mills. I just remember thinking, wow, I couldn't think of a better brand purpose for me personally to work for. But from a brand point of view and a company point of view, it is absolutely ingrained in everything we do, and that has been the case for the last 50 years. And so the family, that was why the company was born out of it. They're all from an athletic background. Les was an Olympian, and so for a fitter planet is part of everything we've done for the last 50 years. But it's not just from a health point of view, but it is from a greener and fairer point of view, and that's just then comes across everything that we do, both from a sustainability point of view, and then, as you mentioned, diversity, equity and inclusion, and how that has just been a key part of the brand over the years. So yeah, you can kind of really feel it as soon as you come into the fold and working there. It is across everything that we do, and then externally as a brand and what we're trying to grow and innovate for a fitter planet, it goes across everything. That was actually a large part of the partnership we've got with UNICEF that was born out of a fitter planet. So we had a joint initiative called Work Out for Water. So for a fitter planet, being able to work out, to fundraise, to then build wells and provide water for communities is just, again, very real to the brand, and very important for everybody at the company, which means it's a very easy job to get out of bed for.
Definitely. I also like that there's a bit on the website as well about how, and very particularly to New Zealand, about the use of Maori culture and how that would only ever be done in an authentic way, which is my Maori friends always hate the way I say the word Maori, so apologies to any people listening who hate that. I'm really sorry, I can't get it right. But certainly in New Zealand, with the heritage of the place, they're really important that they're not just sort of piggybacking sometimes on Maori culture, which I think has been a problem sometimes in New Zealand's history.
Yeah. And I think what's happened over the last 18 months is actually really shown us, we've taken a look at ourselves as a brand, as lots of people have after Black Lives Matter movement and protests, that we then looked again really hard at ourselves. And although the kind of ethos around For a Fitter Planet has always been part of the brand, it gave us an opportunity to relook at everything we do, and including the Maori connection and cultural appropriation. And interestingly, one of the kind of outcomes of us having those discussions, and a lot of hard discussions and really looking at ourselves, is that we felt we hadn't always got it right, that cultural appropriation and how we connected to the Maori heritage, history and culture. One example of that is our values. Previously were one tribe, be brave and change the world, and we've actually changed one tribe to unite it because of the connotations that tribe has, and that was a massive shift. That one tribe has been part of the brand for a long time, but it just wasn't right, and we wanted to be brave. We had to change it. It wasn't appropriate to have that anymore. And so now we're having better conversations. We're learning a lot, and how we should have and celebrate that Maori connection and heritage.
So, Amy, one last thing on sort of diversity and inclusion. I think there's been a subtle shift in the last few years, certainly in the fitness industry, but in wider society, about body shape and body image. So the fitness industry has long been about the instructors being sort of perfect specimen stood at the front of the room, and you're like, wow, if I do this class, I'll get that body, that type of subtle mental imagery. But there's been a change recently, and that's sort of something that's flowed through what you do at Les Mills as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, again, the last couple of years, and so, as you said, it's really come out, especially the last year. in terms of that representation is absolutely key. And I think the fitness industry as a whole absolutely must, be part of that, and a massive voice in that. We are there, we exist to help people live healthier lives, and that goes across all representation, diversity, and that includes body image. I think our latest campaign with Reebok, which is Embrace Your Different, that really speaks to that. I think, as an industry as a whole, there's a long way to go, but I think having the conversations and being committed to making that change and ensuring that we're inclusive and representative of everyone who is working out and is part of that is really important.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant. Well, look, I want to talk a bit more about you specifically as well now. Not so within the Les Mills universe at first, and then looking back into the deep and distant past. But as regional marketing director for Europe, what does day to day look like? Even if at the minute it still means you're not leaving your house a huge amount.
Well, excitingly, we've started leaving the house and going back. It started kind of easing back into the office, which I'm loving, and very exciting. But yeah, for me, as I mentioned, our head office and kind of our brand was born out of New Zealand, and so I have a lot of kind of odd hour calls with our team over there. So being connected to our head office, which again is where the programs are created, and we've got a huge team out there. So staying connected to that team is really important. And actually, it's really an interesting kind of, I suppose, outcome or good outcome of the last 18 months is how we work with, connected to our marketing team over in New Zealand. We're a lot more connected. So we have a Europe pod, which there's team over New Zealand and then the teams dotted around in Europe. So yeah, kind of staying connected to the team over there. UK and Germany are the biggest markets I look after, so spending a lot of time with the teams in both of those markets, still virtually, sadly, but cannot wait to hop on a plane as soon as possible. But then, we are super connected to like all of the different teams that we're working with. So for me, our sales teams, our customer experience team, our operations team, we're working together across all of the different audiences and kind of focus areas. So a large part of that is still and will always remain to our club partners, our instructors. So at the moment, a big focus for us is about getting live fitness back, and we see live fitness as the absolute pinnacle. So getting clubs and instructors back into studios teaching, look at future events. But then on the other side, excitingly, we're looking at corporate wellness and how that impacts, companies and the solutions that we can bring to have a healthier workforce. And so, yeah, I mean, many people must say this on your podcast, but it's no two days are the same, and it's a pretty eclectic mix. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah, brilliant. And what are the interesting bits, because when you're managing a brand out of New Zealand, which it's fair to say there's not many global brands kind of come from New Zealand, is there? There's a couple, yeah, but not very many. So managing a brand out of New Zealand, but across different territories, and you're regional marketing director for Europe. But as anyone in the UK knows, you don't have to hop too far across Europe to get very different cultures and different ways of working and ways of living, and it changes pretty quickly. Germany and the UK, there's a lot of differences as well. So does that keep it interesting? Trying to find the consistency between the brand in those countries, but also working with those regional differences.
Yeah, and I love that. That is again one of the draws that brought me to Les Mills in terms of the role being, my first role was a global role, and this is the regional role. But I love that diversity and change. But then we've got the same purpose in each market and bringing it back to for a fitter planet. But again, the different stages of where each market is, and the penetration that we've got varies massively between the region that I look after. So then again, it just is completely different stage of that journey and growing the brand, which does bring its challenges, but absolute variety and excitement each day, and how we learn from each other. And that's again been a big thing coming out of lockdown and COVID, is how we share and collaborate and connect more. The European business previously was individual markets, and it was only March last year, so kind of on the cusp of COVID, we actually then formed this regional structure to learn and, you know, build more efficiencies, but while kind of keeping and celebrating the differences and the needs per market.
So I'm going to hijack something that you said there, and I'm going to sing the top tip theme tune in a moment, because I think in all the podcasts I've done, there's one lesson which actually you just said there. You're probably thinking, what did I just say? That is probably the number one lesson. And it drives me when I hear companies talk about brand purpose or missions and things like that. And I'm like, what is yours? Well, we don't know. Nobody can remember it, or we can't use it. And what you said there, when I said it's different in different countries and different stages of development, and you just sort of shrugged your shoulders and you went, yeah, but we've got the same purpose. That is how you use brand purpose. It's just like we're all doing the same thing. So I'm going to do the top tip theme tune, and I just want you to shrug your shoulders again and go, "Yeah, we've got the same purpose." If that's all right. So look, it's time for TOPTIP. TOPTIP.
We've got the same purpose.
Honestly, if you're listening to the podcast and you just want to take one thing away from this, from any of the podcasts you listen to, make it this, right? This is it. Have a brand purpose, have a mission, and use it. Don't have a paragraph of, oh my God, you read councils' mission statements are always something like to be the number one borough for people to live in and work in and do this and do that and do it. And like, no one cares. Nobody cares. For a fitter planet, we've got the same mission. That's it. That's all we do. I love it. Honestly, this is the show. That's it. Everything else is rubbish now. This is it. This is the best bit. So
you did say the theme tune would come in at some point as a surprise, and I love it. It did.
It took me by surprise, and I was just like, you said that, I was like, you gotta sing that theme tune. There we go. No, when so many companies, and I've consulted at many companies, when you're like, so what's the mission, or what, do you have a brand purpose, and they show you it, and then you ask people in the room, and you go, well, so do you live this? Is this does this feel like what you do on a daily basis? And people are like, no, we just we hear it at a conference once a year, and then we just go and get on with what we're doing. Like, how sad's that? What a waste of effort, what a waste of time, what a waste of direction. So to hear that at Les Mills, it's there, but not just there and written on a wall in the head office. It's used, and it's what connects everybody on a daily basis. Has just brought joy to my heart on this slightly overcast morning.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself, but it is absolutely ingrained in everything that we do, which is just a joy as a marketer, but as a, just as a person, it's
brilliant.
Great to be part of.
Amy, you've made my day. You've made my day. So let's look back. Let's leave Les Mills, and that there's nothing else we can say. You've peaked about Les Mills, so let's leave that and jump back a step. So before Les Mills, you worked at L'Oreal. That was your step before. Yeah. So what did you do at L'Oreal, and what were the things you learned there at a huge brand that probably has massive cut through? Everybody knows L'Oreal, even if you've never bought a product.
So I worked in, so L'Oreal's got 4 main divisions. I worked in the active cosmetics division, which was an absolute dream. In the UK, it's the smallest of the divisions. And we had an amazing MD who really instilled a very entrepreneurial, like, fell fast sort of culture, let's go for it. And the brands, when I was there, were in a real exciting period of growth. There was lots of opportunity. That French pharmacy skincare kind of revolution was sort of just coming in. And so I worked in active cosmetics the 4 years that I was at L'Oreal. And
for the uneducated cosmetic buyer, that's me. What would be an active cosmetic? Just give it
that's the kind of that's the name for the department, and the brands within that are the sort of heavily based scientific brands. They've got a heritage in the French pharmacy category, right. And so La Roche-Posay, Vichy, kind of 2 biggest brands. They're what make up active cosmetics.
Thank you very much.
So my kind of scientific knowledge and kind of back to my science A levels really had to kind of come out. Like it was the research again, and the science that goes into the products at L'Oreal is immense, and kind of really getting under the, I was about to say under the skin of that, but that was massive. It wasn't even intended that way. But I suppose that was one of the kind of key take-outs from L'Oreal is around that. It's called sensitivity to the métier at L'Oreal, but that kind of deep understanding of the products and the category and the kind of what makes it super unique, and the science that goes into those products. The other, I think, was the takeout or kind of memory of L'Oreal is just the flair and innovation is kind of how I sort of always describe it. And again, coming into active cosmetics and the division there, it felt very innovative and creative, and we were able to develop locally driven campaigns, and kind of really go out on a bit of a limb versus maybe the rest of Europe, because it was such a different category. So that creativity and innovation sort of really sort of honed in at L'Oreal. And
look, another sector that has huge competition is a massive sector in terms of the financial impact of it. But competitors internally, often within the organization, externally from different companies, you really got to kind of cut your teeth and go really hard at that, haven't you? It's a really fascinating sector that we probably should talk about in more depth another time. But just tell us a little bit about I want to say cutthroat. I don't mean that as in nasty, but as in, the brand world is cutthroat in that sector, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And I think companies like L'Oreal have do amazing to kind of build, they've got so many brands and, as you said, competing brands. There is the balance of ensuring that you're growing and driving the separate brands, but learning as a whole company for the total brand and growth of the business is an interesting balance that I think any company or FMCG has in that realm.
And in many ways, you had a good grounding in learning how a big company manages lots of different brands under one umbrella, because you started your career at P&G, which is sort of well known as having lots of different brands in the same space and things like that. So what did you learn at P&G that you kind of took to L'Oreal, or what lessons did you learn there anyway?
Yeah, so I was at P&G for 3.5 years, and incredible place to start my career. And I suppose the brand fundamentals and the training that you get when you join P&G, and the ABM assistant brand management training, and just that appreciation of a brand and the kind of fundamentals of marketing is what will always stick with me from P&G. It's an absolute machine in terms of that structure and process and rigor. And again, that was another thing that I took from P&G. And it was interesting when I was making the move from P&G to L'Oreal, and very different companies. And I remember thinking, wow, I don't think I could get two different more experiences or companies. And then when I've come to Les Mills, I was like, nothing is that was nothing compared to this now, in terms of just like moving categories, going to B2B, going to it just, but at the time, there's a lot of differences in a good way between P&G and L'Oreal, but gave me a really good experience and kind of eclectic mix from the two.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you had the two consumer products, and then you went B2B, but now obviously direct to consumer is a big thing. So you must find that there's often a lot made about B2B marketers can't be B2C and vice versa. I always think it's a little bit overcooked, that type of approach. Like a lot of it, you're just using different bits at different times, but a lot of it's broadly the same, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope that's not the case, because that is just a mix of my role that is both B2B and B2C. So, but yeah, I agree. I think it's not as different as people position it as.
Well, you've worked at P&G, and we know from previous episodes in season 1 with Dan Rubel and Zaid Al-Kassab that things move fast and stuff can go wrong. we also know, because you said it, that you had an entrepreneurial MD who said, look, move faster, break things and see what happens. So you must, over the last couple of years, have made some tremendous cock-ups that would make either good stories or really great learning experiences, probably the latter. So tell us about something that went wrong and what you picked up from that.
Yeah. Well, I'll share a really recent example actually, because why not? It's right in the still in the kind of raw stages. But yeah, we recently had a live stream event that we were putting on and launching to celebrate the kind of back to the industry was opening, and also a showcase around how best to live stream and the opportunity that it can create and kind of the best setup, and rehearsal day and tech setup absolutely perfect. Friday night, all left feeling absolutely pumped. Got in on Saturday morning for the event, and everything had gone wrong, and we were offline for an hour and a half before we could get up and running from the start time. And it was just like that hour and a half, we were like, oh God, everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. But then, I mean, I laugh about it now. At the time, it was a crazy an hour and a half. But then what we have taken from it, so to celebrate the failures and the but what we did take from it is, like, again, we had to think faster. We had to get, we had about 10 different scenarios that were working to that. Right, if we were back online by 10, we're going to do this. If we're not back online by 10:30, we're going to do this. Like, how we communicate to our audiences who were kind of waiting patiently to do their body pump class, and then just the kind of AV learnings that we took from it. And then actually we had a similar event in Germany a couple of weeks after, which then we were able to literally be like, this is everything that we've taken from this event, and this is how we'll kind of change it. So it was a real kind of opportunity to celebrate, okay, yeah, these bits didn't go right and as to plan, but this is how we dealt with it, and kind of almost celebrate that, and then go into this next event with, right, this is what we're taking forward and need to change.
It makes me feel better that on one of the early podcasts, I did the first 15 minutes of the interview without pressing record. And like this morning, I forgot to put one of the lights on before we started. So, things go wrong, don't they? So as long as you learn from them, things can get better. So wonderful. Yeah. Speaking of things getting better, I've got just a couple more questions for you before I let you go. So the first one is about training. You mentioned the training you got at P&G, and I know you kind of consistent professional development can be important. So what sort of training are you doing at the moment, or are you looking at doing to sort of build and enhance your career?
So I'm at the moment, I've been very fortunate to get a place on the Marketing Academy. So I am
look at you.
So we are just at the start of our 9 months. So we kicked off in June with the first boot camp, and at the moment we're going through our mentoring and coaching sessions, and then there's a lot of online learning opportunities as well.
I'm not jealous, Amy. Not even slightly. No, not slightly.
I can't even hide how awesome. I feel very fortunate to be on the Marketing Academy. Just the exposure or connection to other people on the program, and the speakers and the mentors is just incredible. What Sherilyn's done with the program is immense.
If you don't know the Marketing Academy, you're probably not in a sort of a senior role or on your way to a senior role, but Google it, have a look at the program, and you'll just be like, I just want to get on that. And if you use that to guide your career, if a goal in your career is to get on the Marketing Academy to go to a bigger job, you won't be going far wrong, right? So go and have a look at that. Amazing stuff. Amazing. I've just finished the Mark Ritson mini MBA in marketing, and he talks at the end about the Marketing Academy as well as a good next step to go to. I'm like, one day, maybe, who knows? So, and any other training that you've done or that you thought, actually, that was a really important stepping stone along the way?
I think I've been really fortunate in my career, as you said, at P&G and L'Oreal, the brand training that you receive is immense. And then at Les Mills, again, really the culture of development and learning and ongoing development is ingrained. And so some of the leadership courses that I've done at Les Mills have been the best I've ever attended. And again, there's just amazing people in the business that are like, I love a mentoring session or one-on-one coaching, and there's a few people in the company that I regularly pick their brains and have a session on just kind of helping me through whatever it is I'm working on. So I do love that kind of personal connection. And if anybody is in their career and maybe doesn't have that opportunity, go out and find a mentor or anyone that you can bounce stuff off with, because that has been probably the biggest learning for me, or development for me, is that connection and learning what makes me tick. And I think that's sort of been kind of one of the fundamentals that have just come out of that leadership training and that mentoring and coaching, is really understanding you as a leader is, and what your role is, and kind of you as a person, and how that impacts everything that you do day to day in and out of work. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to be in brands and companies that absolutely kind of relish and really prioritize development. But again, kind of finding that what works for you is really important.
Absolutely. Another great top tip in there, but we're running out of time to do the theme tune. But just if you run companies or if you manage teams, invest in them, for goodness sake. It drives me bonkers. I don't understand why so many companies are like, it costs money to do that. But yes, but anyway, we're running out of time. So I've got two more quick questions for you. On the subject of learning, what books do you read, or blogs or podcasts do you listen to, other than this one, obviously, to stay up to date?
Number one, this one.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So, where do you go for your marketing information?
Well, I think when you sent me this question, I was actually like, what are the things that I've enjoyed the most, I suppose, in lockdown? And podcasts has absolutely been the main thing. Like I said, speaking in connection to people is how I learn the best. So podcast has been brilliant in the absence of that, face-to-face time. And there's a broader podcast, but two that I just love. One, How to Fail with Elizabeth Day. And I love her podcast just because I love that ethos of learning from mistakes and failures, and how that makes you a stronger person, and kind of how that guides you for the future. And then just the guests that she has are just immense. So I love that one. And actually that gives me, if I love that external inspirational, just something to kind of take me out of my world and, give me a bit of a different perspective. The other podcast that I really got into over the last year is the High Performance Podcast with Jake Humphrey and Damien Hughes. And I think what you can learn from athletes and amazing sports people and take that into business, I love that, because I think you can't learn from kind of more dedicated and sort of people who go through massive highs and lows that you can as athletes and sports people. And like you said, as we're in the Olympics, it's another level of
I'm a Northerner rugby league fan, and they had Sean. First time I came across that podcast, they had Sean Wayne on, who's now the England coach. And I don't know if you've heard that one or other ones he's done with the BBC. An amazing backstory. He's just a working class lad from Wigan who left home one day at about 14 because he thought his dad was going to beat him to death, and because he'd done something particularly nasty, and his dad set about him, and he left home that day, walked out with only his trousers on because his shirt had been ripped off him, and he's now the England Rugby League coach. And it's an amazing, and he talks about it openly and candidly, a ridiculous, amazing, heartwarming, tear-jerking story, delivered in the thickest Wigan accent you will ever hear. And you're just like, wow. So if you do pick that one up,
I just love that in terms of like learning and being inspired from other people's stories and backgrounds, and how they've got to where they've got to. So yeah, it's a great podcast. There's not just sports people on there, but it's kind of world-class performers. So it's just, again, amazing spectrum and great conversation.
Brilliant stuff. I have taken too much of your time, but if I can, one last question, which is, what one question were you expecting me to ask that I haven't?
Do you know, I thought we were going to dig into a little bit more around the fitness competitors. So, whether that was an Apple or a Peloton, or, kind of what's happening in there. So, but, we went off in many directions that were wonderful and good discussions. So it was.
Yeah, I'm going to say this: Peloton, just don't understand it. Why you'd want to buy spend 3 times as much on an exercise bike and a monthly subscription when you can get Les Mills or even other products, and then I just don't get Peloton. Other than so you can go, oh, I've got a Peloton. It's the only way I can see anybody would want it. You can't say that, I can, but I honestly just do not understand it. Listen, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, do you agree with me or not? Amy, thank you very much for your time. I've absolutely loved this discussion. It has been wonderful. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.